Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark's Backyard Birds. I've been reminded, and a couple of questions lately is to remind people where I am whenever I do a program. And it is in the description below, but I am in Kansas City, Missouri, here in the middle of the country. So when I talk about times and dates and things like that, I remember if you're to the north of us, maybe you've started a little bit earlier than us. And if you're to the south of us, and might be lagged behind us a little bit. And yes, if in the background you can hear Sophie, my 15-year-old Bichon Frise, and she is wanting to talk while I'm talking. So you may hear her a little bit during the recording. So the topic of the day, we get this asked all the time, and it's like, when does bird feeder season begin? And I know right off the bat that many of you feed birds 365 days a year, and like I do. And so for me, there really is no stopping and starting of it. But for a lot of people, there are. There's a lot of people who stop feeding birds. Oh, some people start to stop in the spring when the first signs of really getting warm, where others stop in midsummer when it gets really hot and the bird feeders slow down. When they go on vacation and they come back from vacation and they don't fill their feeders again until the fall, etc. And of course so the question comes from, when should I start feeding again? It kind of is a better way to phrase this rather than when does bird feeder season begin. And even in the summer, whenever your seed feeders get slow, your hummingbird feeders generally stay quite busy, and you have hummingbirds all the way through September now, and even in early October here in this part of the country. I know you guys, maybe it gets over a little sooner for you up to the north, and you guys down the south are lucky. Some of you have them all winter down there, which is a crazy for us to think about here. But the seed feeders are particularly what I'm talking about. The at the end, we always have called it the September slowdown, and that is that a lot of birds disappear during that September period from our feeders. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Nature's bounty is a primary one, when a lot of natural seeds come into play and berries ripen and acorns start falling and things like that. Well, nature turns its attention, birds are no exception to that, to all that free food that comes available. And I've always equated it to, rather than you just eating French fries all day, every day, you've all of a sudden you've got this big buffet line available to you. And so feeders really slow down during that September and especially October now in our area. And so people look forward, and we get the question now: when are my birds coming back? When should we start feeding birds again? Well, if you did stop feeding birds, then I always recommend that you get your feeders up. Boy, you want them up now. You want early November. It's still a little slow out there, although right now we had our first good cold snap here this week, and my bird feeders have been really busy the last few days. I went from no goldfinches to 25 goldfinches overnight at the feeders here. So things are happening in nature, and the key word here is stress, because whenever the conditions are mild, you have, if you're a wild animal, you have the luxury of taking more time to seek out food sources. There's not as much stress on your body. You're not burning energy as fast. So if you have to take a little longer to find a good seed source or fresh berry laden bush or something like that, you can do that. But when stress goes up, meaning when temperatures plummet, and especially once we start getting freezing and thawing, then it comes a little more urgent to you that you're burning off energy looking for food. And that's when bird feeders become really, really important to birds. And they know that, wow, here is a good, dependable food source that I know is there every day, and I can factor that into my feeding regime. And remember, birds only get about 15% of their daily diet from your bird feeders. So when you're, for birds that you see at your feeders, you may think those are the only two cardinals that I have, but in likelihood it's probably more like 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 that are you're part of their feeding travel. So they venture out, and they have their spots they check for food every day, and they move around, and then, of course, they form these intraspecific flocks in winter when they start feeding together. And let's go ahead and I'll bring this picture up here. Yep, and this is some house finches and some goldfinches. and there may be even a pine siskin tucked around there on toward the edge. I can't really tell from this angle, but whenever birds are in the fall, they really start forming these flocks in which they are, if one of us finds food, the rest of us will find food. And quite often, chickadees are the core species. The chickadees are very smart, they're very bold, very good at finding food, and other birds know that, and they follow chickadees around. So when the stress goes up in the fall, we see this influx of birds at our feeders, and this is why here in our area, in the middle of the country here, we consider about the second to third week of November to be whenever the season really, and there's no surprise that coincides with our first frost and our first usually our cold weather starts settling. Now some years are different. Boy, I've been here 32 years now in Missouri, and in the Midwest here, we say there's no such thing as a typical year. The weather conditions are highly variable. Halloween this year, our kids were freezing, and they were all bundled up, and it was like 32 during trick or treating. Whereas some years they're in shorts. It's crazy most of the year, but that all affects birds. The least amount of work for the most amount of gain, and your bird feeders will play into that. So we've always said kind of the unofficial slash official start of the bird feeding season for us is the 1st of November. And that may be different from you. I mean, your feeders still may be slow and wherever you're at, maybe to the south, or your bird feeders are already kicked in. If you live to the north and cold has settled in earlier, I know there's snow cover and parts of north. I know my friend Mary was up in Minnesota this week on business, and she said there's already snow on the ground where she was at. So that will kick in feeders to get started quicker up there. But it is all about stress. If there's a drought in your area and there's not a lot of natural food for them going into the fall and winter, they tend to come back to your feeders quicker. If you have a really wet summer and which enables plants to produce a lot of berries and a lot of seeds, then maybe your return to your feeders by your local birds may be a little bit later. So it just depends. But just know that this is a great time to, hopefully you've cleaned your feeders up. We did our bird feeder cleaning program in September to encourage people to get people to clean up their feeders, get them in all good shape for the fall bird seed feeding season. So that's it. That's why bird feeders get slow in the fall, and they really pick up in the late fall, early winter is whenever that happens. And so that is the slash official unofficial start in a bird feeding season. So pretty simple. Stress, and they'll come to it. Your feeders will come back whenever they need it, and it gets stressful on them. So it's a good idea for a program. It's a fairly straightforward question, but we get it a lot, so I thought I'd address it. If you like the program, please give us a like, a share, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Hit that little bell up there so you know when I'm on.